Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell.
And I'm Patrick Gonzales.
And today, Patrick and I have a special guest who is Michael Powell. Mike is an attorney with the premier law firm in Maryland, in my opinion, Gordon Feinblatt. He concentrates in environmental, energy, and government relations law. That's his practice with Gordon Feinblatt. I came across an article that Mike had written online. He posted has to do with mainly the energy supply that's coming down the road and to be online for us to use. It appears as there's going to be a dramatic fall off. And Michael had commented on something called the Pathways Plan. Mike, can you talk to us about that? What's
Yeah,
going on with that?
it's really an imbalance in supply and demand, right? We have Maryland imports about 40% of its power. We do not produce nearly enough power for what we already have in needs. And what we have in the Pathway Report, which is basically a University of Maryland study of the state's climate change plans, is projected significant increases in demand for electricity. And I can go through what the causes of those are, but a lot of it is climate change. There are some other causes as well. At the same time that we're seeing a dramatic decline in supply of electric power, particularly because the climate change plans call for closure of the fossil fuel plants. And we're simply not replacing the fossil fuel plants fast enough to have that supply demand imbalance in remain balanced. Or it's not balanced now, but the imbalance is going to become worse.
Now, there's the thing called supply, where you have enough supply to feed the grid, but there's potential supply in the event that there's a huge surge that has to be present. Am I correct?
Yeah, the way the professionals think of it is what's called capacity. You got the amount of energy that you're needing on a day to day, and then you have what is the peak capacity you need. What do you need on a currently on a really hot summer day when everybody turns on their air conditioners at the same time? So the price of electricity includes the cost of distributing the electricity, the cost of producing the electricity, and a capacity charge, which is, think of it as a standby price to make sure that that power plant over there or other supply source is available on demand on those tough days. Currently, as I said, in Maryland, we're what's called a summer peak day. It's a hot summer day when all the air conditioners turned on. One of the side effects of our climate change rules are that we're going to become a winter night peak. Why? Because one of the plans is to try to get people off of burning fossil fuels, natural gas, propane, heating oil. That's part of the governor's climate change plan, and instead go to electric heat pumps. So now instead of having fossil fuels being burned in the middle of a winter night, you have everybody turning on their heat pumps and turning them up. One of the side effects of that, of course, is that the solar farms that we're trying to use to replace do not produce power on a winter night. So the capacity problem becomes even worse. But it's the capacity prices in particular which have spiked because they're the canary in the coal mine, if you will, that says you've got a supply demand imbalance. You're not going to have enough power during these peak periods unless you pay people a very large sum of money to keep the power available.
And would you say very large sum of money? These energy prices aren't just arbitrarily set; they're traded like a stock on Wall Street, are they not?
It's an auction, and basically the way PJM is the regional network. It was originally Pennsylvania, Jersey, and Maryland, but it's now got 13 states in it that coordinates the electric supply for the region. And they hold an auction where companies basically bid how much would they need in order to provide that kind of capacity. The price in the BGE area for that capacity portion of your bill soared 800% in the most recent auction. We're talking about numbers of additional billions of dollars that to for the PJM market. it's not 800% of your total bill, it's just the capacity portion, but that's still going to result in significant increases. For example, the western part of the state is going to look at something like a 25% increase in their electric bills. The BGE territory may have a 12 to 14%. The Eastern Shore, we're a little bit isolated, but even here we're going to see a 2 to 4% increase in electric rates. And that's the immediate increase. You can expect a bigger increase later because at the 800% mark, they hit a price cap. They couldn't go any higher. That doesn't mean that in the future they won't go up again.
Michael, and I'm just a layperson on this. I really don't know that much. But is this a logical approach to supplying energy for Maryland? I mean, to have a heat pump driven thing where the solar doesn't work at night, it seems the exact opposite of logical. It seems illogical. So can you help us understand that?
Yeah, I'll give you my perspective on this, and obviously there can be different opinions on this. The state set a very, very, very aggressive goal for climate change. No other state in the country has as aggressive a goal we have. We said we wanted to cut 60% of greenhouse gases by 2031. California is not as strict as that. Colorado is not as strict as that. Washington State's not as strict as that. Nobody else has a goal as strict as what we have. When you back through the pathway report the University of Maryland did, and you said, well, how in the world do we meet that tough standard? The answer is you got to cut something from everything, right? And that includes building heat, because it is true that burning natural gas or propane in a boiler on a house does produce more greenhouse gases than an electric heat pump, assuming the electric heat pump is fueled by renewable power at some point. So what is driving us is that deadline means that we have to very aggressively cut greenhouse gases. We are not building renewable energy power at nearly as fast. In fact, one of my clients who operates the Brandon Shores and Wagner coal plants wanted to close their plants at the end of 2025. That was not only their plan, but their desire. But PJM informed them that they could not close it because it would present the risk of brownouts and rolling blackouts during a peak demand day if those plants were offline. And interestingly enough, PJM's solution is to build a new transmission line and bring in more power from Pennsylvania because they don't anticipate that Maryland is going to be able to build sufficient capacity in the state to supply the needs. And the transmission line optimistically will take till 2028. So now you got coal plants that want to close, that produce a significant amount of greenhouse gases and cannot, because our demand for power is exceeding the supply that we're producing.
Well, to me, and again, it's a layperson, the aggressive deadline doesn't seem to square a jibe with reality, and so I don't understand it. But Clay, maybe you can help me.
Well, let me just add that it's really a matter of people wanting their cake and eat it too, right? We want the coal plants to close. We also don't want a lot of farms converted into solar farms. And you got to have one or the other. You either got to keep the coal plants open or you got to build a lot more solar farms. And I understand, people say, we'll put more of them on parking lots. Yeah, we should do that. Put more of them on rooftops. Yeah, you should do that. But a solar farm does not produce as much capacity for peak days as a coal burning power plant. You can't run the solar farm at night. I saw an estimate that to replace the Brandon Shores power plant would require about 35,000 acres of solar farm. You've got to build them much faster if you want to meet the requirements of the Maryland climate change plan.
The other thought I had, Mike, we had Microsoft recently come in and went and purchased to reignite, for lack of a better term, 3 Mile Island, one of the reactors there, in order to fuel their data centers and AI. That's going to be the future. AI and these data centers. Obviously, Maryland wants to have data centers in the state here. That requires a lot of electricity. Do you foresee a nuclear future or nuclear option that's going to be more realistic or prevalent or sellable to the public than it was, say, 40 years ago after the 3 Mile Island incident?
Well, let me phrase this carefully. The Wall Street Journal has reported that my client, Constellation, is negotiating with Amazon for a data center at Calvert Cliffs. And clearly, at 3 Mile Island, it's being proposed to reopen. Another of my clients, Talon, has made a deal with, I think it's a Microsoft in Pennsylvania, to devote a lot of their nuclear plant there. To what is occurring, I think, is the nuclear plants which were closing, and even Calvert Cliffs, that was a very questionable whether they would renew their license when it next expired, are suddenly in demand because we have the need for this additional power, and it's green power. It doesn't produce any greenhouse gases as it produces. So yeah, I mean, look, data centers are going to be built somewhere. The demand is just too great. And given that we import 40% of our power from other states like Pennsylvania, having the data centers built in Pennsylvania is a lose-lose for us. We lose the power and we don't get the jobs. So you got to figure that we're going to need to have them built here. We're going to be providing nuclear power is a lot better than trying to keep a fossil fuel plant open to power them. But once again, it's a matter of keeping the supply and demand in balance.
Do you foresee new nuclear facilities at existing plants, maybe expanded? Or is there a possibility you could find new sites for new reactors, even those smaller types that I've been reading about? Is that in the future?
I think it is in the future, but then the question is, how long ago is that future? The small modular nuclear reactors, which are being talked about, are much, much safer than the old style. I mean, I'm not a nuclear physicist, though. Believe it or not, I did study physics for a while in college. But you don't have the meltdown kind of issues that you do with the older style. But the resistance to nuclear is so great. The cost of setting something up is so huge that it's going to be, I think, a while before we can get that going. I personally think that is something that we have to do to meet climate rules. I just, my firm does more solar farm permitting than anybody else in the state, and so we believe in solar, but it doesn't produce the kind of 24-hour power that you are going to need to fuel the future. Not to mention, electric cars, electric heat pumps. We talk about the data centers. The new laptops and computers are going to have artificial intelligence on your laptop, and they're going to draw more power than the existing laptops. So across the board, we have to plan for that additional demand. And I haven't yet seen the pathway. I know Maryland Energy Administration is working on a report, but a pathway to see how we get the supply back in balance. And I should add,
go ahead, Mike.
I should add that there's a lot of finger pointing going on right now about why is the supply and demand out of balance. My own view is that there's problems at all levels. At the PJM level, the process for getting new permits issued is very hard. It is a long backlog, a long queue, and they definitely need reform. But at the same time, on the state level, we've been reluctant to build solar farms as fast as we want, and for understandable reasons. I don't, there's a tendency to go, well, those are bad guys because they don't want to have a solar farm built over there. I don't believe that. But I also believe that somewhere something has to give. You can't close the coal plants and not build a lot more solar farms. It's just the reality of it. We can't keep building transmission lines to bring in power from elsewhere. The kind of opposition there is out in Frederick County, and that transmission line, by the way, does not serve data centers. It anything other than population growth out there. So you're going to see this continually a problem. You can't oppose transmission, you can't oppose generation, you can't close generation and then say, oh, well, the lights will stay on. It won't happen.
The power line that they're looking at putting in Frederick County out in western Maryland, like you said, has caused consternation among the people. That's part of the PJM, is it not? And
Yeah. And I completely understand it. If I owned a farm out in northern Frederick County, the last thing in the world I want is a transmission line going through my property. But it's got to go somewhere. And I mean, you might be able to get by with less transmission lines if we were building more generation closer to the places where we're going to need the power. But that means a lot more solar farms in Western Maryland. Right,
Mike, look, you got to explain something to me. What you say they've got the transmission lines have to be somewhere. Why do we need the solution to bring in energy from Pennsylvania? Do we not have the capability here within the state to produce?
We don't.
This is very illogical to me. I'm very confused.
Currently, we bring in 40% of our power from other states. And the reason is because we simply haven't built enough power plants. And that 40% import is going to get worse when the coal burning power plants close. Because as you know, the governor wants those power plants closed. The owners of those power plants want to be closed. That makes the imbalance even worse. I mean, God forbid if Calvert Cliffs ever closed, we'd really be in trouble, though data centers may rescue that. But no, you've got to build power plants if you want to supply the power that we need, and just not happening.
I mean, I guess what I don't understand, what do we, the state of Maryland, accomplish if we shut down bad power plants, but we're importing energy that perhaps is also generated by bad power plants? It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm very confused.
I agree with that. I think that the state, as I said, wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They don't want the power plants, but they want to continue to grow and use more power. And other states around us were not as eager to close out, particularly the gas burning power plants. Coal burning power plants are closing anyway, right? They're not economically competitive with the gas burning power plants. But other states were looking at building new gas plants. That's something that we've been reluctant to do. Again,
I think the problem will be solved the moment people open up their electric bills 2-3 years from now and see it go up quantum leaps, 25, 30, 40%. That's when the political will may be there to do something about capacity.
The three of us remember the days when Ehrlich ran for re-election and got terribly beat up by the increase in electric rates when the price freeze associated with deregulation expired. We're going to see the same kind of price increase. And it is true that at least in part that, and perhaps in large part, of those price increases are related to climate change policies. I think there will be a backlash against that unless we find some way to face the music and keep the system balanced.
Is there any way to revive or reuse, like down in Vienna, Maryland, where that old, I think it was a coal burning power plant was located, to do something with that to help capacity down the road? Obviously it can't be coal, but the facilities there and the ground is dedicated for that type of a purpose.
There are. A lot of them are being looked at as possible solar farm locations, and perhaps even more importantly, central battery locations, right? I mean, one of the problems with solar farms, or for that matter, particularly onshore wind, is the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, so you need massive battery backup, particularly as we go to a winter peak scenario. Well, you've already got distribution lines headquartered on that. I mean, the way I describe it is our power system was set up like a spider web with these massive coal plants at the middle of the web, and then these lines snaking out. Now, if we're building solar farms out on the edges, we suddenly have this spider web having to be reversed in some way. So obviously, a good location is where those power plants used to be, but you got to come up with a reason for people to want to invest, and you got to find a way to speed up the processing of permit. Right now, it can take more than 5 years to get a facility built in Maryland, and when you've already got a significant deficit of power, that delay can be you're putting out the capital and waiting for it to come back to you. It's just not feasible.
Well, Mike, I appreciated your article on this. You're sort of the canary in the coal mine with this potential issue coming down the road, and hopefully it is a siren song for policymakers to pay attention to and try and ameliorate the situation, because I have a feeling the appetite for fossil fuel plants is pretty much gone, but we do need to take a look at supply that's out there, and I know you and your clients are working hard to try and address those problems.
We definitely are. It's good talking to both of you.
You too, Michael. We appreciate you here today. We've come to the end of the show, and I'm afraid, Mike, it's time to say goodbye, Patrick. Michael, goodbye.
I think Mike missed his cue.
I think you were supposed to say goodbye, Patrick. And I can't edit this.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick. Thank you very much.
And Michael, thank you so much. Something that comes up during the session, we'd be sure to get you back on and talk about this again. Thank you so much, Michael.
Take care. Bye.